Hello, everyone. We'll be getting started in just a moment as we let folks dial in. Just as a reminder, everyone is on mute during the call. If you do have any questions, you can click on the little hand button next to your name, and I'll be able to unmute you if you do have a question. As well, you can use the chat feature.
Hello?
We'll be getting started in just a moment as we let folks call in and join into the meeting. All right. How someone is unmuted. I'm curious who that is. All right, and Mary, it looks like you're on the call. So we'll be getting started in just a moment here.
Okay, David, am I muted or unmuted? Can you hear me?
You are unmuted.
Okay.
You are unmuted. Yep. Yeah. So we'll give folks just another minute or so. We've got about half of the 30 that have signed on already. So we'll give folks another couple minutes, or not couple, give folks another minute. All right. Well, a couple more folks have joined on, so maybe another 30 seconds, and then we'll go ahead and get started. I'm trying to figure out who is unmuted here, but I can't. All right. It looks like we have about 20 folks on the call, so we'll go ahead and get started here. And we should have some additional individuals joining us as we get going. Thank you all for signing up and participating in the monthly briefing for ACT's public policy. We actually have a great agenda today and an opportunity in a few minutes to meet our new government affairs team that will be working with us for the foreseeable future and hopefully years to come, heading up our federal lobbying activities and public policy government affairs work for the organization. As we go ahead and get started, just to quickly run through the agenda, we'll have an introduction from Smith, Dawson, and Andrews, Mary Cronin and Jim Smith. We're going to talk about a quick update on tax reform and its impacts on the transit benefit, and the issue that has developed around unrelated business income. And also want to just talk about session development for the international conference, an update on our legislative fly-in, and then just some very quick, updates on federal legislative issues, and give an opportunity for folks, if you do have any questions, to feel free to kind of open up into discussion at the end of the call. Just as a reminder to everyone, everyone should be on mute during the call, just to be able to cut down on any of the background noise. If you do have a question, you can click on the raise your hand button. It's a little icon that looks like a hand that should be next to your name, and we will keep our eyes open to see if there are any questions that come in as we go through the call. Call today will probably take about a half an hour, maybe at most, so it should be fairly quick call today. Before we jump into the meeting, I did want to thank those of you that were able to join us at our Emerging Mobility Summit out in Columbus, Ohio, a couple of weeks ago. This was a new event that ACT hosted, really focused on emerging mobility options and the integration of new technologies in transportation with TDM, and how do we ensure that we are achieving the goals of TDM in increasing mobility and access, and reducing congestion, improving air quality, and supporting economic development as we develop all of these new transportation options for folks. We had a great turnout. We weren't sure how many folks would come to this event when we started planning it. We were hoping for 100 to 120, and the event actually sold out a few weeks in advance, and we ended up with 150 folks joining us in Columbus for the day and a half event. Several of the discussions that were taking place at that summit did have a focus around public policy, whether it was the role of government in supporting and accelerating new mobility options, or how to integrate dockless bike share systems into your cities, or improving access for all individuals. There are a variety of policy opportunities that were being brought up for ACT to continue to look at as we move forward. We will be having a publication that comes out of that event, a summary of all the discussions, opportunities for new research or policy goals, that will be pulled together into a single document, hopefully to be completed by the end of June. We had volunteers that were taking notes in all of our discussion groups that were held during the event, and they have just gotten their first drafts of their summaries back to us on Friday, so we're continuing to kind of move that forward as quick as we can, and should be a nice resource document for folks for our members as we move forward. So if you weren't able to join us this year, the board has decided to host the event again next year, and we're right now looking at destinations for us to go next spring to have that event again, and hope that you'll join us then. I'm going to turn it over now to Mary Cronin and Jim Smith, who might not be on the line yet, from Smith, Dawson, and Andrews, to introduce themselves. And just as a refresher, we started the process of finding a new government affairs team back in February and the selection committee made up of board members and public policy committee members met or reviewed the proposals that we received. We had a great response and conducted interviews with 4 firms and came to a unanimous decision to recommend Smith, Dawson, and Andrews as our new government affairs team, and the board approved that at our meeting in April. And Smith, Dawson, and Andrews is now under contract with ACT as of May 1st. So we're thrilled to have them on board, and I'll let Mary take it from here and introduce herself as well as the team for Smith, Dawson, and Andrews.
Hi, David. Actually, it's Jim, and I am on. Am I unmuted? Can you hear me?
Yep, you are unmuted,
okay.
And I can hear you.
Okay, great. I apologize in advance. I'm actually on the Hill this afternoon. I'm calling in from my cell phone, so I apologize if there's any background noise. And I will not be able to stay on for the whole 30 minutes of the call, but Mary will. First of all, let me just say thank you. Thank you to you and to your board and to your selection committee for choosing Smith, Dawson, and Andrews for this engagement. We are really excited to be partnering with ACT on your public policy and federal lobbying agenda. I have to say that we were really excited when we got the RFP and we looked at it and we reviewed your mission and felt very strongly that it was very complimentary of what we have done for the last 35 plus years in Washington. Smith, Dawson & Andrews is a public affairs lobbying firm. We've been in business since 1981. I am the president and a co-founder of the firm. I came out of the U.S. Department of Transportation, as did other colleagues of mine in the firm. So we have a strong transportation background, and it's a major focal point of our practice. Public transportation and transportation demand management are both client areas as well as general areas of interest for the firm. So we feel that there is a lot of similarities between what we've already done and what we will be doing for you. We have put together a team to work on this account. Mary Cronin, who is on the phone as well and will pick up from me here in a few minutes, has been with the firm for almost 10 years. She came to us from Capitol Hill, where she had been the staff director of the Northeast Midwest Congressional Caucus, which is a bipartisan caucus of 75 members of Congress. At the time she was there, it was chaired by former Congressman and chairman of the T&I committee, Jim Oberstar. So Mary has a lot of familiarity with these issues and with your policy agenda. As we mentioned to David when we were interviewing for this position, we were heavily engaged in defending and expanding the transit tax fringe benefit back in the 2015 reauthorization bill and then subsequent tax bills and extenders. It was a major focus of a campaign that we undertook on behalf of an organization called Getting America to Work. So we feel very strongly about that, and we know that there are new challenges now as a result of the most recent tax bill. We look forward to having you in Washington next week. I know David and some of the board members are coming in. I'm going to let Mary talk to that. Mary's been busy setting up meetings for next week's schedule. As you may know, it will be a really busy week in Washington. It is infrastructure week, so if you can imagine, there are lots of transportation infrastructure groups flying in next week. But I think we have put together a pretty good schedule, and we look forward to sitting down with you and digging deeper into your agenda and getting to know each other better and helping you formulate a Washington program. So with that, I'll turn it over to Mary, and I'll go on mute.
Thanks, Jim.
Thanks, Jim. Thanks, David. As Jim mentioned, we're really delighted to be working with ACT, and we really believe it's a good fit. We know it's a great fit for us, and we think you'll come to find that it's also a great fit for you. As Jim said, we've been working on transportation demand management issues for a host of different entities for basically decades. And we're just excited that we were able to make this connection and that our partnership has begun. So next week is a great chance for some of the executive committee members to get back into DC, reintroduce ACT and your federal priorities. We'll have an opportunity to meet with the Deputy Administrator of the Federal Transit Administration, as well as the Acting Administrator for the Federal Highways Administration, so we can make an introduction and walk them through our priorities and tell them who we are and what it is that we're hoping to accomplish on behalf of all of your members. We'll also be going to meet with the Treasury Department to talk about the Tax Cut and Jobs Act elimination of the tax write-off for the employers who were subsidizing employees' commuter costs. And in addition to going to Treasury to talk about that issue, we'll also be taking it up with both the House Ways and Means Committee staff as well as the Senate Finance Committee staff. And while we're on the Hill, we'll make a visit with the minority and majority staff directors of the House Transportation and Infrastructure Committee, as well as the professional staff on the Senate Banking Committee to talk about ACT's overall federal priorities and introduce ourselves and find out if there are some opportunities for us now or in the future in which we can be better engaged or have a seat at the table on ongoing policy discussions, particularly as we continue to talk through possible infrastructure bills. And those could be transportation infrastructure bills, or they could be water infrastructure bills. We've just been going back and forth about the Water Resources Development Act and ways in which we might even be able to incorporate some bike and pedestrian transportation demand management issues alongside of the Army Corps of Engineers Water Resources Development. So that's where we're at. We're focused on our visit next week and looking forward to meeting everyone.
Excellent.
And I would just add, David, one more thing. That is that Mary and I will be overseeing these issues with ACT, as well as Brett Garson, who was on our interview call. Brett is general counsel in the firm and has deep understanding and experience with these issues. He couldn't be on today, but you'll be hearing from us regularly.
Excellent. Thank you, Jim. Mary, curious if you can just quickly kind of talk about some of the onboarding that you will be doing with ACT and our members to really get a sense of the issues and who we are over the next kind of few months time period.
Sure. So far we've received some of the materials that ACT has used in prior years and earlier this year to demonstrate or express what your priorities have been and who you are. So what we plan to do in the next 2 to 3 months is do a deep dive with ACT to identify what your priorities were, what your priorities will continue to be, but not only right now in this year 2018, but also looking at this first year, then years 2 and 3, and then years 3 through 5. So we really want to look at that plan going 5 years out. Some people call it a deep dive. We call it more of a strategic planning initiative. So we'll actually produce a strategic plan, and from that document we can produce a concise federal agenda, which will be the agenda that we will take to Congress and we will take to the federal agencies, as well as to some of the other associations in Washington where we may have some additional aligned priorities. So that's really our goal for the next 2 to 3 months in terms of the onboarding process. I know, you've got a very large membership, and so there may be some outreach to some of the members in that process to get a sense of where you see the organization going in the next 1 to 3 to 5 years.
Excellent. Yeah, this is a real important time period for the organization. As we use these next few months to really not necessarily just reevaluate, but look back on what we've been doing and looking forward, especially on what what opportunities may present themselves for the organization to get involved in. As our membership has grown significantly over the past 2 years, we've definitely seen a kind of diversification of our membership, in a wider spectrum of organizations within TDM, whether they be new emerging mobility providers or shuttle providers or growing number of universities and private employers. There's a lot of voices that we are representing now on the issues of TDM, and it really presents a good opportunity for us to spend some time getting a good sense of what are all of our members wanting to think about and focus on from a policy perspective as we move forward with ACT, in the next year, 3 years, 5 years down the road. So I encourage everyone that's on the call and all of our public policy committee members and the membership as a whole to really take advantage of this opportunity to get engaged in the work that the committee is doing and to be working with Mary and Jim and Brett as we move forward to lay out our priorities in the next few months. Excellent. And if anyone has any questions, feel free to ask now by typing them in or raising your hand. There will be many opportunities as we move forward. Mary, at least, and hopefully others will be joining us on our monthly calls. As we go forward through the year. Excellent. I don't see any hands up, so we can move on. Mary, thank you. Jim, thank you so much. And actually, just wanted to.
Thank you, David.
No problem. Thanks. Echo one. The executive committee is flying to DC next week for 2 days, well, a day and a half, to meet with Jim and Mary and the team, as well to do a number of meetings that Mary's been able to set up for us on the Hill. It's a really exciting opportunity for us to, as Mary said, reintroduce ACT to the staff and leadership at the different agencies. And it was actually pretty impressive that in really a week and a half notice of us coming out there, that we have so many meetings scheduled and taking place. So I really want to express my thanks to Mary for pulling that together for us, especially during a busy week like Infrastructure Week, so when everyone else is going to be out there as well. So excellent. Well, we will move on to the next agenda item, tax reform and its impacts on the transit benefit. We've talked about it at previous meetings. There's been lots of questions swirling around in conversations that have been taking place in regards to the change in language that has nonprofit tax-exempt organizations having to pay unrelated business tax on unrelated business income on qualified transportation fringe benefits. And actually, there were kind of three main benefits that were wrapped into this new fringe benefits being included in the unrelated business taxable income. The qualified transportation fringe benefit being the one of most significance and importance to us, but the parking and qualified parking benefit, and then athletic facilities, primarily on campuses that are there. And what it does for those who may not be aware is it treats those costs that are incurred by a tax-exempt organization for those benefits as unrelated business income, basically saying that since providing transit is not at the core mission of say, a university, that those costs and the savings that they're receiving are being now booked as unrelated business income. The pre-tax benefit is still being allowed for the program, but the pre-tax savings that a nonprofit is receiving through its is being classified as unrelated business income. The IRS sent out its publication 15B a couple of months ago, and many of us were hoping for additional guidance on how organizations should be tracking or classifying some of the numbers and dollars received in these programs. But unfortunately, there wasn't a whole lot of guidance provided, which has opened the door for a lot of confusion to be held within our whole industry. Many organizations are starting to go to Treasury and to Congress seeking out additional information and guidance, but we do not anticipate anything coming in the near term. The ACT board discussed this issue at its meeting in Columbus, and came to an agreement that this is an issue that the organization needs to be directly engaged with. We were, and always have been, a chief proponent and supporter and advocate for the transportation fringe benefit. So we need to continue in that role as we move forward. One of the things, though, that we need from our members to really help us in this effort as we go to have conversations with the Treasury and with Congress is to get a better understanding about how this is impacting our members. And hopefully many of you have seen that we released a survey earlier this week, or last week actually, to start collecting information on how this change might be impacting the provision of the qualified transportation benefit at your work site, as well as your general awareness of your organization's awareness of the issue itself. One thing we have heard from a lot of, especially non-members of ACT, is that they were unaware that these changes were taking place. And which is a real concern of ours and a concern of theirs now that they know about it, of how their organizations are actually looking to respond, and when they go to submit their quarterly tax bills, if they'll be in compliance with their with the new rules. So the survey is collecting information on a few key questions around, how your organization is looking to respond, the general size of your program, so that, as we go and tell stories, we can show the significance that these changes have had or may have on commuters across the country. As well, what are some of the things that you may need from ACT or would like to see ACT do in response to this issue. You know, should we be advocating for a delay in the implementation of this portion of the tax code? Should we be trying to reverse it? Should we be, pushing for some specific guidance on areas, on unique situations? There's a lot of questions that we have, and we hope that you will share that information with us, so that we can better prepare a response from ACT, and to be able to sit down and talk with the Treasury about some very specific impacts that this change has had, most of which I think are unintended consequences, as an outcome of this change. The survey has been sent out via email. It's also on, there's a link from the homepage of the ACT website. It's up on our LinkedIn group. It's, I believe, been posted on the Facebook page. So there's many locations that you can get to the survey. If you're able to respond in the next few days, that would be most helpful. We will be aggregating all the data. So if you have any concerns in regards to privacy, none of the information is going to be identifiable. It will all be aggregated together. We will not even be listing out which organizations responded to the survey as we promote and talk about the data that we receive. So I encourage everyone, if you can, to take a few minutes. It shouldn't take more than 3 or 4 minutes to complete the survey. Does anyone have any questions? Again, you can type them in or raise your hand. Oh, I see you, Danelle. Hold on one second. You should be able to talk, Danelle.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Would you be able to, I know we get some questions from nonprofits. Let us know, like, what is the impact, like, in dollar amounts? Like, what would they pay in taxes before someone elects pre-tax benefits versus what that amount is after?
Can you restate the question again? I didn't quite get it all.
So if a nonprofit now has to classify benefits as UBI, what is the difference in before and after? Like, if now they have to pay for pre-tax benefits for, say, 5 employees or 20 employees, like, what's the percentage difference for nonprofits?
Yeah. And this is where I give the obligatory. I am not a tax accountant, so I would defer to your own internal tax teams and accountants for specific answers. But my understanding is that the UBI would be the total amount of your subsidy or your pre-tax benefit. Say it was $100,000 a year that you were providing in subsidy or receiving in pre-tax benefit, and you would be paying the 21% tax on that number. And if I'm incorrect on that, if someone wants to jump up and tell me, no, that's not right, do that now. Or let me know. But I believe that is the correct case. Larry, I don't know if all right, Larry says I got it, so we'll go with that. So it would be whatever your total value is of your program. And this is where the big concern is, where we may have some universities and hospitals that are subsidizing or have significantly large programs where they may have several $1 million a year going into the transportation fringe benefit program, and could be hit, or will be hit, paying a 21% tax on the value of that program. So you have a $5 million program, you're looking at $1 million, and this is just on the transit side, $1 million tax bill. And then Larry just added, as well, any expenses related to providing the benefit, like parking maintenance, is subject to UBIT as well. And actually, Larry, you want me to open you up here? Hold on. You're self-muted, but if you want to jump in, Larry, and add something real quick, feel free.
That's fine. It's basically beside the value of the pre-tax or the subsidy that is subject to the unrelated business income tax, any expense according to the IRS, or according to the tax law, related to providing the benefit is subject to that tax. The issue, of course, is, what does that include, and how far will the IRS take it? We don't know yet. So, for example, like if a university uses a third-party administrator to provide the benefit, and there's some fees attached to that, which are usually pay the TPA for that service, will those fees be taxable to the university? Or parking, which is the biggest question, and the area where we actually might have some ability to reduce the provision of parking, is that what circumstances will lead to an additional taxable event. So if the employer has a facility that is leased, what are those, and provides parking to the employees at that leased facility, what is the value of each parking spot, and what is the cost that's built in terms of maintaining the facility or security or whatever, or if the employer or the university owns their lot, will the IRS require them to value that parking as well as all the other associated costs? So this could be a really big issue, and the IRS needs to clarify that. But whether or not they will, we don't know.
Yep. Excellent. Thank you, Larry.
Sure.
So yes, this is going to continue to be a major focus for ours in the near term. I think only in the next few months will we really start to see some of the negative repercussions from this change starting to sink in. So I would encourage folks, especially if you are an organization that is working with other, a regional rideshare program or TMA, if you're working with other nonprofits as your members, to make sure to notify them of these changes, as well to let us know of any impacts that you may be seeing within your membership. It'll be important for us to collect as much information as we can moving forward. All right, so I will move on. I wanted to remind everyone, one, that our international conference is coming up at the end of July. Early bird registration actually ends on Friday, so if you haven't done so yet, please take a moment to register and for the event and save yourself a couple $100. We have at the international conference a public policy committee meeting that will be held on Sunday afternoon, and it's a good opportunity for everyone to be able to get together in person to talk about our policy efforts and issues versus doing so on the phone. And then we will have 3 session slots reserved for public policy. These have not yet been planned out, and it will be important, though, over the next month for us to really nail down what these sessions will be focused on. I can guarantee you one will most likely be on the transit benefit and the issue of UBIT, but there are other options that are out there as well for the other sessions, whether it's talking about new mobility options and how do we integrate them and into our existing systems, or performance measures, starting the conversation around federal authorization. These are all important topics for us, and I want to put out an invite and request to all of you on the phone. If you have an idea for a session, to please feel free to reach out to myself or to Casey Murphy to let us know, and we'll kind of take it from there. If you have an idea for a full session and speakers as well, let us know, and we can discuss them. If you're interested in volunteering in any way for the event and helping with these sessions, just reach out, and we greatly appreciate any and all hands as we go through this effort, and we'll be working with Mary and her team to move them forward as well. Our DC fly-in, as many of you may recall, we were looking at actually next week to have ACT's fly-in event. We postponed that to September 26th, 27th. There were some current concerns around attendance from Public Policy Committee members. We were able to work with our hotel and get them to shift the fly-in, our room block, to September without any penalty. So we were able to do that. A great silver lining to this is that we will now have a good 3-4 months working with Smith Dawson to prepare for this fly-in event that will take place at the end of September. It will be focused on Hill visits and really providing an opportunity for all of you to be able to come to DC and share your stories with your congressional delegation, and to talk about some of the priorities that ACT has with them, to see how we can start to advance some of our policy objectives. I would imagine that still at that time the issue around tax reform and UBIT will be a significant talking point for us. So if you represent a region or you're with a nonprofit organization, really a good opportunity to come out and share the story and talk about the needs that you have in regards to some of the changes that we would like to see happen. We'll continue to talk with Mary and the rest of the folks at Smith Dawson over the next month or so, and to really start laying the groundwork for that fly-in. An idea though that has come up to we know that not everyone is able to come out to DC and to meet with their congressional their staff in Washington, but something that we're looking at trying to do this year is to have a local focus to it, and really work with the membership to have meetings with their congressional staff or congressional delegation back in the district. You don't have to go to DC to communicate with your member of Congress. They all have local staff on the ground, and we'll be looking at how can we create kind of a coordinated effort for our members to kind of hit the districts throughout the week of our fly-in. So if folks are interested in possibly helping and coordinating and planning that activity, please feel free to reach out to me as well. Any questions about the fly-in? If you had previously registered for the fly-in, you should have received an email about the change. You can either keep the registration and the payment that you had made already and just transfer it over to the new event. But if you're not able to join us in September and you need to cancel your registration, just let us know. And then just a quick federal updates, and perhaps Mary might have some other ones, to share with us. The White House yesterday submitted its rescission package to Congress. It's kind of the White House's way of whittling back its big, the congressional, budget, that they had submitted a couple months ago. It was a $15 billion request. It did have some monies within the FTA, about $46.5 million in formula grants. The Department of Energy actually had a $4.3 billion rescission on advanced technology and vehicle manufacturing loan program, something that's not necessarily heavily used, but it's actually focused on the development of, new fueling and charging for vehicles, kind of supporting the research and development, manufacturing of those systems, things that we're starting to look at a bit more as we go into autonomous vehicles and clean energy vehicles as a part of the solutions for commuter transportation. So it was a large rescission piece. About half of the request was actually from the CHIP program, that's the Children's Health Insurance Program. But we'll try and get some additional information out on these as more of it becomes available in the next few days. Congress does have 45 days to act on this request, so we'll know what the final numbers are in about a month and a half. And that is it. I'd be happy to take any questions or open up for some discussion if anyone has any comments or questions regarding the items we talked about today or anything new that we may not have talked about today. And if you simply raise your hand, I'll be able to open up your mic. All righty. Well, seeing none, I will end the call, and thank you all for joining us. And the next meeting will be the second Wednesday in June, which is June 13th, 2 o'clock. Thank you all, and look forward to seeing you in Anaheim.